Welcome to the Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where every cup tells a story, and every story starts with a sip. Join us on a journey of adventure, camaraderie, and of course, the finest brews, served hot and steeped in mystery. From dragons to ancient legends, we're brewing up more than just coffee. Today's tale begins. Amid the clamor of a bustling tavern, the group encounters Braticus, a warrior monk with a knack for turning chaos into comedy. Between trading punches and telling wildly absurd stories, Braticus leaves them wondering whether he's a wise fighter or simply an entertaining disaster. As the night draws to a close, the group must decide if this eccentric storyteller is the ally they never knew they needed. But before we dive into today's adventure, a quick word from our sponsor.
Plot holes. They lurk in the shadows of your story, waiting to derail your narrative when you least expect it. But don't worry. A Fiction Writer's Guide to Plot Holes by author Anne Snizek is here to help. This handy guide gives you the tools you need to spot, fix, and prevent plot holes before they become a problem. Ready to keep your story airtight? Grab your copy on Amazon today.
Now, grab your mug, settle in, and get ready for the next chapter in our brewing saga. Episode 4, Tavern Brawl. The sun dipped low as the group approached the outskirts of Trefallion, a bustling trade town nestled against a winding river. The streets bustled with merchants hawking wares, travelers exchanging tales, and street performers dazzling small crowds with feats of acrobatics and song. It was a stark contrast to the quieter wilderness they had just left behind. Java's golden green eyes darted around, fascinated by the cacophony of sounds and sights.
This place smells alive,
he murmured, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his snout. Nived, his fiery red scales glinting in the fading sunlight, snorted.
Alive? More like chaotic. Let's just find somewhere to rest.
Patches, the calico healer with her ever-practical demeanor, adjusted her satchel.
Tavern should have food and lodging. Let's not dawdle.
The group soon found themselves outside the Copper Cask, a large, lively tavern with its sign swinging in the evening breeze. The moment they stepped inside, the noise hit them like a wave, laughter, shouting, and the clinking of tankards. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meats and stale ale. Before they could find a table, a tankard flew past Java's head, smashing into the wall behind him. He flinched, his yellow firefly moonspots glowing faintly in alarm.
Looks like the excitement found us first.
Nived quipped, already eyeing the source of the disturbance. At the center of the chaos stood a towering figure, a man with long hair, a small braid falling over each of his broad shoulders, and a full, thick beard that framed a grin wide enough to rival the moon. His brown robes, reminiscent of a monk's, were freshly spattered with drink, but his movements were precise and calculated as he dodged blows from two burly attackers.
Come now, lads.
The man bellowed, his voice rich with humor.
Is this really how you want to spend your evening? Losing to me?
The two men roared in unison and lunged. The monk sidestepped deftly, using their momentum against them. One stumbled into a table, flipping it over, while the other found himself pinned to the floor in one swift motion. Java tilted his head.
He's good.
Patches sighed.
Good at finding trouble, perhaps.
The brawl escalated as more patrons joined the fray, some aiming to help the monk, others seeking any excuse to throw punches. Before long, almost the entire tavern was caught in the melee. Patches groaned.
Great. Just great.
She reached for her staff, prepared to protect the dragons. But before she needed to step in, the monk called out.
Oi. New faces. Fancy lending a hand?
Nived's eyes narrowed.
Is he talking to us?
Java shrugged, but a small grin tugged at his snout.
Why not? Could be fun.
The dragons dove into the fray, their small size making them difficult targets, but their strength more than enough to subdue the average tavern brawler. Patches reluctantly joined, using her staff more to redirect than injure, muttering under her breath about reckless companions. The monk, noticing their skill, laughed heartily.
You've got fire, little ones. Quite literally in your case.
He added, winking at Nived, who had singed the edge of a chair with a misfired flame. Within minutes, the brawl was over, the majority of participants either sprawled on the floor or nursing bruises. The monk clapped his hands together, surveying the damage with pride.
Well, that was invigorating.
The barkeep glared at him from behind the counter.
Braticus, you're paying for the damages. Again.
Braticus chuckled.
Of course, my good man. Put it on my tab.
He turned to the odd little trio, bowing theatrically.
The name's Braticus O'Relious, warrior monk extraordinaire. And who might you be?
Java stepped forward.
I'm Java. This is Nived, and she's Patches.
Braticus raised an eyebrow.
Interesting company. Let me guess, on a quest for glory and riches?
Something like that?
Nived said cautiously. Braticus's grin widened.
Then we've much to discuss. You see, I've been chasing rumors of a legendary treasure. They say it holds the key to unlocking. Well, something forgotten. Secrets of old.
Java and Nived exchanged a glance.
We're after the same thing.
Java admitted, bouncing a little in his excitement. Braticus clapped his hands together.
Splendid. Then let's share a meal. I'm buying, you've earned it.
Patches gave him a skeptical look.
With what coin? You already owe the barkeep.
Braticus waved a hand dismissively.
Minor details. Come now, food and drink await.
Cautiously, the group followed Braticus to a table in the far corner, where the chaos of the brawl seemed to fade into the background. Bowls of hearty stew and steaming bread soon arrived, along with tankards of ale for the adults. Java and Nived each received mugs of apple cider, which Nived eyed critically before pulling a small pouch from beneath his wing.
What are you doing?
Patches asked, raising an eyebrow.
Improving this.
Nived replied. He sprinkled a pinch of savory spices into their ciders, then exhaled a controlled puff of flame over the mugs to warm them. The aroma wafted across the table, making Braticus pause mid-bite. The monk sniffed the air and said,
That is the scent of someone who knows their beverages. My respect, little one.
Nived smirked, taking a careful sip.
Thank you.
As they ate, Braticus regaled them with tales of his adventures, each more outrageous than the last. His humor and larger-than-life charisma slowly wore down their initial weariness. Braticus leaned back in his chair, a twinkle in his eye as he set his tankard down with a satisfying clunk.
Ah, let me tell you the tale of the Great Goat debacle, a story so ridiculous it's practically a legend in its own right.
The group exchanged skeptical glances but said nothing, waiting for him to continue.
It all began when I found myself at the Monastery of Silent Contemplation, a quiet little haven tucked into the side of a mountain. Now, these monks prided themselves on their vow of silence. No talking, no humming, not even a sneeze louder than a whisper.
He leaned forward conspiratorially.
Naturally, this made me a perfect guest.
Java snickered, and even Nived smirked. Braticus continued.
Anyway, I was there to learn their meditative techniques. All was going well until I decided to stretch my legs one evening. That's when I spotted the monastery's sacred goat, a shaggy old fellow named Bartholomew.
A goat?
Patches raised an eyebrow.
Not just any goat.
Braticus exclaimed, gesturing wildly.
This was the goat, the pride of the monastery. They believed Bartholomew was blessed by the heavens, a symbol of wisdom and patience. I didn't buy it, but hey, who am I to judge?
He took a long sip of ale before continuing.
So there I was, admiring this goat, when I noticed something strange. Bartholomew had a bell around his neck. A shiny, beautiful bell that gleamed in the moonlight. Turns out, it was no ordinary bell. It was the bell of resonance, an artifact said to amplify inner peace or some nonsense.
Nived folded his arms.
I'm guessing you didn't leave it alone.
Braticus grinned sheepishly.
Guilty as charged. I thought, what harm could it do to give it a little ring? So I did.
He mimed tugging an invisible bell cord.
And let me tell you, that bell boomed. It wasn't some gentle chime, it was a gong so loud it woke every monk, shook the walls, and, here's the kicker, spooked Bartholomew.
Java's eyes widened.
What did the goat do?
Bartholomew panicked.
Braticus slapped the table, laughing.
He bolted straight through the monastery, knocking over statues, scattering scrolls, and, you won't believe this, he managed to headbutt the head monk right out of his meditative pose. I've never seen a man tumble like that in my life.
Patches groaned, rubbing her temples.
Let me guess, you were blamed.
Braticus feigned offense.
Blamed? I was hailed as the man who tested their discipline. Granted, it was after they chased me halfway down the mountain with brooms and sticks. But hey, they eventually forgave me. Bartholomew, however, became the stuff of legend. They claimed the chaos was a sign of divine intervention.
The table erupted in laughter, even Patches unable to suppress a chuckle. Braticus raised his tankard in mock solemnity.
To Bartholomew, the most enlightened goat to ever bless a monastery.
Naived shook his head, still smirking.
You're unbelievable!
Braticus leaned back with a satisfied grin.
And that, my friends, is why goats and sacred artifacts should never mix.
Braticus leaned forward again, the grin on his face promising yet another tale of absurdity.
All right, since you seem to enjoy the goat story, let me regale you with the ballad of the bouncing watermelon.
Java blinked.
Bouncing watermelon?
Oh yes.
Braticus said, nodding solemnly.
It all began in a little farming village called Sweetvale. Lovely place, famous for its enormous watermelons so big, they could probably crush a horse if one fell off a cart. Anyway, I was passing through, minding my own business, when I saw a crowd gathered around a very distressed farmer.
What happened to him?
Patches asked, already skeptical.
Well, this poor fellow had a particularly large watermelon rolling downhill toward the town square. Normally, a watermelon rolling down a hill isn't a big deal, right? But this one had been enchanted by an overeager wizard's apprentice who thought he could make it grow faster. Instead, the spell made it bounce. And not just a little bounce, this thing was like a cannonball on springs.
Naived rubbed his temples.
I feel like I know where this is going.
Do you? Because I certainly didn't at the time. So there I was, watching as this gigantic, enchanted watermelon bounced higher and higher with every impact, heading straight for a wedding in the village square. Naturally, I had to act. No way was I letting that thing ruin someone's special day.
So you saved the day?
Patches crossed her arms. Braticus hesitated, rubbing his beard.
Let's say. I tried to. I ran up the hill and managed to intercept the watermelon mid-bounce. But what I didn't realize was that the enchantment made it not only bounce higher but also gain speed. The second I grabbed hold of it, I was flung through the air like a ragdoll.
Java burst out laughing.
You flew? Holding a watermelon?
Indeed. Arms and legs flailing, beard whipping in the wind. I must have looked like some kind of wild bard's tale come to life. To make things worse, I landed smack in the middle of the wedding feast, right in the cake. The bride was covered head to toe in icing.
Naived covered his mouth, stifling a laugh.
And the watermelon?
Ah, yes, it bounced one last time and landed perfectly on the banquet table, splitting open without a single seed going astray. The crowd went silent, staring at the mess. And you know what happened next?
Braticus said with a chuckle.
What?
Java asked eagerly.
The bride laughed. Turns out she had a great sense of humor, and instead of being furious, she declared it the most memorable wedding Sweetvale had ever seen. I was hailed as both the hero of the day and the wedding's surprise entertainment.
Patches shook her head in disbelief.
You're either incredibly lucky or incredibly ridiculous.
Probably both.
Braticus said proudly.
But I'll tell you one thing, never underestimate the power of an enchanted watermelon. Or a bride with a good sense of humor.
As the group chuckled, Braticus raised his tankard again.
To life's little surprises, and to never saying no to a good story, no matter how messy it gets.
By the time their plates were empty and the last of Braticus's tales faded into a chorus of chuckles, the group found themselves feeling lighter, as though a hidden burden had eased. Laughter had softened the edges of uncertainty, and Braticus, with his absurd stories and infectious grin, had somehow bridged the gaps between them. Though his true motives remained unclear, there was no denying the warmth his presence brought. Java leaned back, patting his small belly.
I think that was the best meal we've had in days.
Probably because you didn't have to forage for it.
Naived teased, swirling the last of his spiced cider.
And because it wasn't a mystery root or half-burned mushrooms.
Exactly.
Java grinned, then turned to Braticus.
You tell wild stories, but you're all right.
Braticus gave a mock bow from his seat.
I aim to entertain little dragon. But don't worry, I do more than talk. I can swing a staff and crack a few heads when needed.
He patted the heavy wooden staff leaning beside him, its surface worn and smooth from years of use.
You witnessed a touch of that earlier.
Patches, who had been quietly observing, stretched and stood, brushing crumbs from her tunic. She spoke firmly, her tone signaling the end of the evening.
Tomorrow we plan For tonight, let's rest. We'll need clear heads for what's ahead.
Braticus raised his tankard with a grin that seemed permanently fixed on his face.
To the start of a grand adventure, then.
Nived lifted his nearly empty mug of cider.
To adventure.
Java followed with a bright smile, hoisting his own mug high.
To friendship.
Patches hesitated, then sighed as if giving into an inevitable truth. With a small, reluctant smile, she lifted her mug as well.
To survival.
The crackling fire in the hearth flickered and popped, casting shadows that danced along the tavern walls, as if echoing their shared toast.
Come on, you two.
Patches said to the baby dragons.
It's time to get some proper sleep.
Java gave a sleepy yawn, his little claws rubbing at his eyes, while Nived stretched his wings and reached for his spice pouch.
But the fire's so warm.
Nived protested softly, his voice tinged with drowsiness.
You'll be just as warm upstairs.
Patches said, scooping up Java while ushering Nived toward the stairs. Patches led them upstairs to the room she had rented, the wooden floor creaking softly beneath their steps. As they reached the room, Patches set Java on one of the soft beds, tucking a blanket around him as he curled into a tiny ball. Nived hopped onto the bed beside Java, arranging his blanket to leave room for his pouch beside him. She tucked the blankets snugly around them. Java nestled close to Nived, already half asleep, while Nived muttered something about keeping his spices safe before drifting off himself. Patches stood for a moment, watching their peaceful forms.
Good night, little ones.
She whispered, a rare softness in her tone, and gave each of them a gentle pat. With the dragons settled, Patches turned to the other bed. She smoothed the blanket and sat down for a moment, glancing back at the now sleeping pair.
Sweet dreams.
She whispered, stretching before settling into the second bed herself. The room was quiet save for the faint sounds of breathing and the occasional soft rustle of a wing. The road ahead would undoubtedly be dangerous, but for now, they had food, warmth, and the beginnings of true friendship, forged in the firelight of a bustling tavern and sealed with laughter and stories. For now, that was enough. The fire is low, the mugs are empty, and tonight's tale has come to an end. But the journey is far from over. Thank you for gathering with us at Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where adventure brews with every sip. Join us next time as new challenges arise, mysteries deepen, and the magic of the tavern unfolds. If you enjoyed this taste of adventure, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode. We'll save a seat for you at the tavern. See you soon.